I'm the Book Baron. Welcome in, everybody. So today we are talking about all the books that I DNF'd in 2025. I think I might have some regrets about putting this video together when I realized how many books it is, because I think this might be the most DNFs I've ever had in a year. The variety of reasons keeps growing. Sometimes right book, wrong time. Sometimes it really just isn't for me. But there's a whole host of reasons that I have DNF'd in the past year. So this isn't me going, wow, I read so many bad books or anything along those lines. I have to admit that I'm not very good at tracking DNFs because depending on the type of DNF, I categorize it sometimes differently. I'm basing this off of my DNF shelf on Storygraph and Goodreads, which also had some discrepancies, so this might not be a complete list, but this is as close as I can get to the best of my knowledge. Before I jump into the books, I have to say my piece on this because every year we have a discussion about how it's really toxic to talk about worst books of the year. I don't agree with this whole premise because I think this perspective kind of flattens what DNFing represents to a lot of readers, and I think it confuses critique with cruelty. I think toxicity comes from behavior, not from a discussion. And I think DNFing discussions are important because when I was much earlier in my reading journey, especially when I emphasized the quantity of books that I could read, I would not quit books. So I really want to normalize quitting books that you're not enjoying. And the older that I get, the less tolerance I have for book that is just going to even be okay. I also think that this helps kind of emphasize the subjectivity of reading and might help you better understand the type of reader that I am and what I look for. This also helps me understand patterns. Like I remember a couple years ago, I'm like, oh, so I'm not vibing with why choose as much as I thought I was. Maybe I need to take a step back. And I think the DNFing conversation just helps support healthier reading habits without just automatically assuming that DNF equals bad. Now, if you don't want to consume content around DNFing and worst of, that is totally fair. I get it. Use your time however you would like, but I just find this whole like DNFing videos and worst of videos are toxic to be kind of a version of toxic positivity. At the end of the day, I'm just a random lady sitting in her living room talking to a camera about her opinion on books. So take it for what it is. A random lady sitting in her room talking about books. Also, if this is your first video, fair warning, I am of the snarky sassy variety. Be prepared. Also, if you see a cover of a book go up that you're like, oh, I just really love that, and it might bother you for me to talk about something that wasn't working for me or something I didn't like, just get past that one. We'll jump in on the next one, or we'll meet up on the next video. I also wanted to let you know, I'm not going to be talking about what these books are about too terribly much. I'm just going to be talking about why I DNF'd these books. Okay, now let's jump into the books. All right, first things first, we started off the year strong with 5,000 Nights of Obsession by Drethi A. This I actually read for a vlog, so I'll link that up here if you want to check it out. This was something that really sounded like it was up my alley. Dark Great Gatsby retelling, but I found the characterization of the heroine quite confusing because she was both sheltered and naive and needed to spice up her life, but also seemed to be so much of a mess up that everyone was really pushing her to get her crap together. Just didn't feel like she was a very consistent character. It felt more like that she was changing personality to suit a specific scene. And then when it came to the obsession and the stalking, it went from kind of like mysterious and toying to 100. It felt like a no burn, and it was just moving a little bit too quick for me. Next up, I DNF'd Break For Me by Ember Nicole. This is one that I actually got a fair ways into. I think I was like 60 or 70% in. This one, I just stopped reading because frankly, I forgot that I was even reading this book. It started off really action-packed, it had some fun banter, but at a certain point, I just found the hero and heroine's relationship a bit bizarre. Instead of having tension or chemistry, seemed to just have these intrusive sexual thoughts about one another. I also got a little bit confused about the heroine's motives as I was getting further into the book, because like one scene she's running and she's like trying to get away from the hero, and then the next scene she was like crying and giving up, and I couldn't really figure out what happened to make that transition happen. And again, I kind of felt like the heroine was acting in a way that would make that scene interesting and not necessarily in a way where her motives were consistent or her characterization was consistent. Now that said, I would give this author another shot because I did make it a fair way into this book. So there was something there that was kind of holding me. Next up is The Poisoner by Ivy Ophelia. So this one was one I had a hard time DNFing. I really gave this one a good good go, but I think I only made it about 30% in. I still remember being in the ski lodge, waiting for my husband to be done skiing with like my noise canceling headphones, and I'm just like trying to zero in on this book, and I just could not make myself read it. Part of it was I feel like I could feel the author's presence in the book a little bit too much. I don't know if I want to call it wish fulfillment necessarily. It was kind of like, see, she's different. See how different she is? Because she's like in a Victorian setting, but she's got like jet black hair with a gray streak. Feels like something that would be more appropriate for something that is actually like just a full-on fantasy. And she was not so much quirky as just straight up odd, like peeing herself in order to win a high stakes game or falling asleep while she was in danger. She was an odd one. And at a certain point, I felt like there wasn't a lot of connective tissue between the scenes where it felt like they were building on one another to create a plot. It was her bumping into this hero and being fearful of him, but not really ever making any plans to try and get away from him when she sensed danger looming. And I just kind of found myself really not that excited to pick up this book. So, I actually made further in. I DNF'd around 40% into this book. I would maybe try this one again on audio just to see if a different format would work for me. I might give it another go. Next up, I have Wolfbound by Kayleigh King. So she was going to be at a signing that I was going to, and so I wanted to read some books of hers. And I also knew that she had a paranormal wolf shifter romance coming out, and so I wanted to read one of her earlier works that was kind of in the same vein to see if I wanted to get a special edition, maybe of her upcoming release, because it wasn't out yet at the time. This one was totally fine. It was just a little bit too tropey for me. There wasn't anything really holding my interest, and I felt like the heroine felt a little bit self-insert, or maybe even just YA, maybe that's a better descriptor. Another one where I just kind of found myself bored, so I DNF'd it at 36%. So next up I have Our Thing by Nikki Harris. I wanted to pick this one up because I love her Cradled Commons series. I don't even think I made it 20% into this book. I could not stand this heroine. Oh my God. She felt YA. She kept saying the word frick. I get that we're trying to emphasize that she's like so innocent and pure that she won't even swear, but it was straight up 8 times in one chapter. It was just used way too many times. And it didn't feel like someone that was gonna get like a big character arc. It felt like the author trying to have like relatable. She's just like you. She's bookish. Rather than someone that had a lot of growth ahead of her. There was just a lot of stereotypical characters. Again, this one was very tropey, so I ended up DNFing this one pretty early on. Oh, next up is another painful one. Okay, so this is Irreversible. It's by Jennifer Hartmann, and Shelley St. Claire, I think is her writing partner. I didn't write down the other author of this book. I'm so sorry. I love Jennifer Hartmann, which is why I picked this one up. I was hooked initially. I found the heroine and her story very cinematic and glamorous and intriguing, and I wanted to know what was going to happen to her, but the second the hero got introduced, I was off board. I don't really like reading about cops in the same way that I don't like reading about investigative journalists. They usually do something dumb for the sake of their work, kind of stereotypical grizzled cop. I just don't care. And I felt like it was moving more in the direction of a detective mystery thriller rather than the emotions and mindset of someone who is held captive. And then the romance, I was absolutely not feeling it. The hero was such a dick, as if I didn't have enough reasons to dislike this man. He was a dick to the heroine for absolutely no reason. They were captive together and he was so cruel to her. It was also just boring to read about because they were making up stories and having big flashback sequences and talking about dreams they had. I don't even want to hear about your dreams in real life. Why the hell would I want to hear your made up stories and your weird ass dreams from a character I simply couldn't give less of a fuck? So I DNF'd. Okay, next up is one that I actually think other people might like, but it was definitely not for me. So it's Salt by Liz Shipton. So this one is a dystopian. The world is flooded. And so there's kind of like a pirate sci-fi type of a feel to it. Unfortunately, the execution of this one fell flat for me. I think this one I DNF'd like 75% in. I just found the heroine once again to be really immature and really frustrating. I just felt like she was really lacking self-awareness. There was even times where I found myself kind of empathizing with the people that didn't like her simply because I was like, well, you made a reckless choice and therefore there are consequences to your actions. That's simply how it will be. She just kind of constantly made bad decisions. And the bad decisions seemed to be the way we were going to get into this plot. The romance I also found kind of equally unconvincing. The hero and heroine kind of argued like children rather than having like a banter or a chemistry. So it just never felt like it really clicked. And then I think because they felt so young when there was smut, I was just kind of, oh, this just feels kind of shoehorned in. And then there was also attempts to explore alcoholism and racism. They didn't get handled with the most nuance. Like, it's not like they were handled poorly per se, but it was like, yeah, girl, like that's been established. Racism is bad. Like I said, DNF this one at 75% because I was just kind of over it. I didn't really care how it ended. Next up is Bull Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. This is another one that I believe I have on a vlog. I will pop that up here in the cards. This one, I just didn't feel like there was many stakes. So I think if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more cozy, maybe this will work for you. But I did not like the romance in this at all because it felt like it was exclusively driven by the Minotaur's rut. So it didn't feel like there was chemistry building, but it was just a biological need to nut. Why am I like this? I also found the heroine in this one very irritating. She was supposed to be 30, but she was acting like she was a book smart 15-year-old. So naive, so sheltered, and is kind of ignorant to any risk or issues that might come up. Like she just has a hope and a prayer, and that's the extent of her planning. And I think I DNF'd this one like maybe 30% in. I don't really remember. Next up, I have Boudicca by PC Cast. This one I picked up from the library kind of on a whim because I was in an era where I was looking for a good like barbarian Viking style fantasy. This one I thought would fit the bill, but I ended up DNFing this one at 25% in. Again, not because it's bad, but because it just felt really grim in that sort of lit fic historical kind of way. It reminded me of Circe, where it was just like grim and dark, and it's about women just suffering, and there's no hope because there's all these oppressive systems. I don't want to read about people being miserable the whole time, which sounds ironic because I do love captives, but there's something about those types of books that are just so depressing. I just can't get into them. Next up, I have Blood of Desiderium. I never looked up how to say that or the author's last name. It's Stuebbe, I hope. I ended up DNFing this one about 50% in, and that was because this book just felt entirely tropey. There was nothing in here that was unexpected or fresh or interesting. It was like the author went through a checklist of tropes and scenes that they wanted to put in there and just went, I'll take a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. So I just found myself kind of like rolling my eyes because I'm like, yeah, we've been here, we've done that. We've seen the best guy friend, it turns out, is only in it because he's hoping to get some punani someday, and when he's rejected, he turns into an ass. Like we've done this before. Heroine was also that kind of like YA, like strong badass girl. She's like, I love my fighting leathers and I hate those frilly dresses. Kind of the kick in the pants with this one was that the dialogue was just really, really stiff. There was just nothing for me here that I was excited about. Next up, I have Debt Inheritance, and this is by Pepper Winters. This one, I think I DNF'd 50% in because I was straight up bored. It felt very dated, and it is an older book, so maybe that's to be expected, but it just kind of had this almost old school fanfic feel to it, where it was like really high emotions that swung back and forth very quickly. There was also plot holes that I was already clocking pretty early on. Like a guy comes to abduct a woman in Italy, I believe, when they are both British. Sir, you couldn't have waited 5 days for her to get back from Italy to abduct her in the country you guys both live in? It just seems like that would be a lot more economical. Honestly, better for the planet because you're not using your private jet. But yeah, it was just one of those where I was kind of like, I don't know that the setup even makes sense. And then her and her brother were a little too horny together, and that really grossed me out. So I DNF'd at 50%. Next up, I have The Paper Swan, and this is by Leylah, I believe. This one, how far did I get into this one? 60%. Okay, so one of the big things that was really frustrating for me with this one, because I love Captive, I think what didn't work here, for one, I just felt like so much of the story was flashbacks for the hero and heroine in the past, and it was a lot of them when they were like 10 years old, which I just don't care about characters when they are children. I'm not interested in reading the perspective of a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old. And then I think what was hard for me as someone who consumes a lot of captives is that I've seen Stockholm Syndrome done so well. But this felt more like someone that understood it on an academic level, but it was kind of missing this believability and this emotion and feeling part of it. So it read a bit dry. So I decided to DNF it because I realized that, you know, the majority of the story really wasn't working for me. And the bits that were when they were together in the present timeline, and we just were not getting that much of that. So I was like, you know what, that's okay. I'm just gonna move on. Next up, I have Whispers and Roars, and this is by Webster. This one is another one that is a ton of flashbacks. That is something that I have definitely noticed. I like dual timeline when done well, not always, but I really don't like flashbacks and dream sequences. The second those start getting introduced, I start getting a little bit irritated. So when a lot of those get introduced, I become a lot less interested. This one was moving quite slow for what I was looking for at the time. There was a lot of vague references to something bad that happened, but like both of the characters were kind of intentionally like not thinking about what that thing was. And at about 30%, I was like, oh my God, I get what's going on here. I was like, oh shoot, I've read this type of book before. I know what this twist is gonna be. And so I could kind of tell that a lot of the book hinged on that being a big reveal. And so I was like, you know what, that's okay. I think if you haven't read that particular twist before, this will probably work and be really fun. But I've read it a lot of times at this point. So I was like, oh, I gotta call it here. Next up, I have Say You Swear, and this is by Meagan Brandy. This one I was really sad about because I bought this book thinking for sure this was gonna be a book for me. I just did not like the writing in this at all. I don't require fancy prose. I don't require writing that is beautiful or like even noticeable. I just want writing that tells me a story in a way that I can almost ignore it. If it ends up being beautiful on top of it, excellent. But the way this was written, I could feel it. It was so clunky and it read almost like I was reading a middle school girl's journal. It was so YA. There's also just kind of an overstuffed cast of characters. Either felt like I was coming into a pre-existing series, like this was interconnected with a prior series, or we are doing so much setup in this first book because we have a whole series coming. It was just kind of hard to get these big info dumps about these people that didn't really have anything to do with the story going on between the two main characters. And then the dialogue was diabolical because there's this big group of friends. There's these girls that are very close. And if you've ever watched White Chicks, that aged like milk, but I used to love that movie. It reminds me of the friends in there. That's the type of friendship these girls have. I found myself rolling my eyes. I was not connecting with any of the characters because it just felt very Disney Channel. And I had heard it was supposed to be so emotional, which is why I picked it up. And I was like, well, if I'm not loving the characters, those emotions are not going to land. So I decided to DNF this one. All right. I think I might have accidentally bumped my setup as I was sitting down after taking a little bit of a break, so sorry if things look different. But next up I have For You, Always Been You by QB Tyler. So this was one that had been on my TBR forever. I was so excited to get to it. Normally I like QB for something high spice, taboo, but this one was maybe, I don't know if it was too taboo for me or if there wasn't enough development with the relationship. Because I think with taboo, because this one in particular is adopted siblings that were largely raised together, I need a little bit more to tell me why they are willing to forego societal norms, why they're not going to shack up with someone else who would be so much easier. I didn't feel that build. And so then when they're getting spicy and calling each other baby, I was just kind of like, oh, please stop. This is moving too fast for me. And then they were kind of like immediately like, we're together. We got to tell our family. And then there was also like a lot of awkward dialogue. Dialogue is huge for me. When dialogue feels stilted, it just irks me. And I was starting to feel that in here, and I don't remember that from other QB books. So I just decided to DNF this one because honestly, I was straight up uncomfortable. So next up I have The Night and the Moth, and this is by Rachel Gillig. So this one, I thought had a really interesting premise, which is why I was so surprised when I found myself so bored. Part of the premise is that like the heroine's fellow diviners are starting to go missing and her going after them and finding out what happened to them. And I just didn't feel that connected to those women to like, I cared about them as people, but I didn't care enough as a part of the plot, if that makes sense. I didn't have enough attachment to them. I was just finding that this was a pretty plot-driven story and I didn't really care about the plot. I also didn't really care about the characters and their relationship either. The only thing that I did really like was Bartholomew, who was like this gargoyle thing. He was really cute, but I'm like, that's not enough to keep me invested. Next up I have Sinners Anonymous, and this is by Somme Sketcher, and this one was once again a case of I didn't like the heroine because she was childish and naive and just felt so painfully immature. And I think especially because this one is age gap, that felt particularly yucky. One of the things was like the heroine kept mentioning that she does these really bad things, but then all the things that she kept mentioning were very benign and dumb, kind of contributed to her feeling very innocent and naive. And I was so sick of her telling us that she was bad, but not really showing it. Like if she had done something really bad, I hadn't seen it to the point that I got in the book. She also uses bird names in place of swearing. Again, immature, but also very distracting. It was kind of giving elementary school teacher. I just felt like the further I got into the book, instead of her having a character arc or maturing, that she was actually getting a worse and worse case of dumb bitchitis.
I got dumb bitchitis.
So I really wasn't loving that. And then again, the romance feels gross because I'm like, what do you like about her besides that she's got a banging body B, everybody on my D. Oh my God, fuck you guys, I forgot we're not getting down with Nicki Minaj anymore. What am I supposed to do with all these lyrics now that Barb showed her ass online? I didn't foresee this going down this way. Anyway, getting back to the books. The other thing too was that this takes place on the Washington coast. I just didn't really find that setting all that convincing, that there would be all these mafia groups in these really tiny towns, because I've been to those towns and they're just like, I don't know, like hardworking folks. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. So I DNF'd it about like 50% in, I think. Next up, I have Devious Secrets, and this is by Measha Stone. So this is one that I think I DNF'd around 60%. This one was just one that was absolutely not worth my energy. Maximum levels of tropiness, unconvincing setup, was just a constant cycle of the same types of things. The heroine was doing something stupid. The hero confronts her about it. He starts using sex as punishment. The heroine kind of trusts him for that moment, but then shortly after that gets mad, and the cycle repeats and she does something stupid again, and on and on and on and on. The heroine also came across very stubborn and immature and never really seemed to fully grasp the danger she was in. And in fairness, the hero didn't really act like the big bad guy that he was supposed to be of an organized crime group. He at one point, pretty early on, was having a little kiki with his boys, and they were ribbing him about having a lady friend. Okay, I mean, sure, why not? It was just really clear that these characters weren't really all that well fleshed out or had a lot of backstory that was established about like who they were, because they were just used to execute desired tropes, and so it just really felt flat in a lot of ways. And then midway through, I actually started laughing because another trope got introduced, and I was just like, why? What are we doing here? So I decided to DNF it in a fit of giggles. Next up, I have Run Run Rabbit, and this is by Nascosta. This is another one that I DNF'd about 60% in. So this book, I just felt like was kind of a mess. There's technically two different timelines going on that we're flipping back and forth between, but then there's also flashbacks within both of those timelines. So I just found myself kind of confused about where we were in the timeline, because that impacted where Grayson and Vanessa, our hero and heroine, were in their relationship. The relationship was kind of like at first toxic fun, but then it just kind of got irritating as he wanted to be the community dick, and he wanted her to just be with him, but then he also didn't want to be with her. And then there was like some serious topics that got introduced, and I was just like, this is a novella. This is supposed to be a fun, silly, goofy time. It's supposed to be a monster romp. So I didn't love that that was starting to be introduced. I don't know that I even loved the way it was handled. When I started getting annoyed, I went and looked at reviews because I was like, do I push through? Do I push through? And I was reading that this is actually a happy for now, which in a back and forth relationship, I just don't find to mean anything, because they go back and forth. They've already been in a happy for now situation, which is when they were on, and then they undo that and then they're off. I just kind of felt like this book was a mess. Next up, I have The Chase, and this is by Reece Barden. I think I read to about 40% on this one, and this one, I enjoyed it just fine for the most part, but there was like not enough angst and tension for me. The heroine is a human that doesn't know about wolf shifters before the start of this book, and I just felt like she kind of accepted it a little bit too easily, and then she finds out she's fated mates with this wolf shifter and just sort of accepts that without a lot of resistance. There wasn't enough going on with the relationship relationship that I could really like sink my teeth into. This is also interconnected with another series. If I'm gonna be reading the first book in a series, I want to feel like it's the first book in a series. Like, I felt like I was missing context. Apparently these other books from a prior series were about her sisters, and I'm like, that's just like a little bit too close to our main character to feel like it's divorced enough from that storyline. Like, they were already starting to make appearances, and I think this is fine. I didn't find it to be bad. It was just kind of like enough things stacked against it that I was like, not my taste. Next up, I have some more recent ones. So If You Don't Love Me, We Both Die by C.M. Stunich. So this one, technically, I think the percentage that I got in was like 10%, which doesn't sound that far, but this is a really long book. So I actually made it a decent way in. There was a couple of different things that were kind of bothering me. One is that there is just so much talk about boba. And don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy boba as much as the next. But I just felt like it was coming up a little bit too much, and I don't like when food or a love of a color becomes a personality trait. It's giving horse girl, and I say that as a horse girl. And then I was starting to feel like the book was maybe, I don't know if I want to say like wasn't worth the page length, or maybe needed some editing, because there was random inserts and asides that kind of broke tension within the scene. So like the heroine's going to deliver the news that something terrible happened to her family who's all trying to watch football. We get a whole paragraph about why the front door is always unlocked as she's like going into the house. I just don't know that I need to know that. That just feels very over-explained. I have heard that this one is extremely emotional though, so I think I'm probably gonna come back to this one. I just need to really be like buckled in, ready for a 900-page book that meanders. Now that I know what I'm getting into, I'll come back to this one when I'm really ready for it. Because I really did like that setup. The setup was so fun and like fanficky, and I just, I loved it. Next up, I have Willow by E.M. Reagan, and this I DNF'd, I think at like 20 or 30% in. This one was because the setup felt very contrived. It was supposed to be an enemies to lovers. I just felt like we were jumping through hoops to try and make this happen because, okay, so he, the hero, is her stepdad's nephew. So they were like step cousins, and he hates her mom because she's a gold digger, which she is. But then for whatever reason, also hates the heroine because of that. She didn't do anything to you. Calm down, my guy. And also, I'm like, I don't understand why he was in his uncle's business in that way. Why do you care who he is marrying to that level? He was coming in and ranting and stuff. I'm just kind of like, my guy, calm down. Let the man live his life. This really has nothing to do with you. And then there was just like some weird things that, I don't know, maybe they get explained, but I didn't really care. The zombie outbreak happens like while she's at her house, and she calls him. I'm like, okay, so if you hate each other, why do y'all have each other's numbers? At one point, the hero ends up getting her and is like driving to his mom's house, and she is familiar with the house. I'm like, how? How are you familiar with this house? How are you familiar with what the neighbor looks like? According to this family tree, there would have been no reason for her to interact with his mom. Her stepdad's ex-wife was the one that was related to the hero's mom. Hopefully you guys are following this. So there's no family functions where they would all be because the stepdad is the ex. He is not related to any of these people by blood. So then he would be on the outside. Like that part never made sense to me either. And the second that she called, he comes crawling and he is naming her everything under the sun. Princess, baby, low. And I'm like, okay, for two people that supposedly hate each other, you sure got a lot of fucking nicknames going on. I just wasn't into it. All right, these last ones are ones that I mentioned in my December wrap-up, so I'm gonna go super quick. I have Affliction by Crystal J. Johnson. This one I DNF'd at 25%. I didn't realize it was a fantasy apocalyptic romance, so I'm gonna come back to it when I'm looking for that combo. Then I had Wife Number 1, and this was by L. Thorpe. This was a DNF at 30%. The story just wasn't really pulling me in. There's nothing really wrong with it. I just think it would have been a 3-star read for me. Then I DNF'd Born for Marble by Nicci Harris. So this one I DNF'd at 30%. I just didn't feel connected to either of the characters. I didn't buy their chemistry at all because the heroine's mental illness felt very stereotypical and like something that you would see in a movie. Like she was so unwell, she wanted to like cut her hair off. And at times she acted very childlike, which made the romance then feel really icky because I'm like, why are you attracted to someone that's acting like a child and is not mentally fully there? And the plot seemed to be like they're going to be traveling around together. And I was like, just don't know that that's enough for me. Then I DNF DNF'd at 50% Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. This one has beautiful writing. It has the loveliest metaphors. I think it just moved a little bit too slow because between those descriptions and the fact that there's a lot of times where the hero and heroine are spending in their heads, there's not a lot of movement with the plot and there's not a lot of movement with the relationship. And the hero and heroine just weren't spending a ton of time together. And I get it, like it's an enemies to lovers and it's a true enemies to lovers. So we need to take our time there and make sure that that relationship is convincing. But at the time, I just needed something faster paced. And finally, the last DNF that I had was Commodity by Shay Savage. This was a DNF at 30% because I completely misunderstood what the premise of the book was. It was kind of giving like espionage thriller rather than gritty apocalyptic book. I just wasn't really that interested. I also didn't really, once again, connect with the heroine because I felt like she didn't really want to survive all that much. And you know, in an apocalypse, I kind of feel like that's an important part. Those are all the books that I DNF'd in the past year. Some I'm coming back to, some I'm not. I would love to hear from you. What were some books that you DNF'd? Why did you DNF them? Did you notice any patterns with your DNFing this year? Are you trying to do more DNFing? I would love to hear anything and everything around that topic and how that's come up for you in your reading. If you liked any of the books that I talked about, feel free to hype them up and give a different perspective in the comments as well. And with all of that, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure this is a very long video, so I really appreciate you spending part of your day with me, sitting down for so long and making it to this point in the video. You're the real MVP here. I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a like. If you're on mobile, give it a hype if you so choose as well. Apparently that's a new thing that we can do. And don't forget to subscribe, especially if this is your first, second, third time here and you haven't done that already. Just double check that you're subscribed, especially if you would like to see more videos from me. I really, really hope that I see you on my next video. Bye-bye.